So let's talk about one of the most pivotal moments in modern history, the attack on Pearl Harbor. This is the day that grabbed a reluctant United States and threw it headfirst into a global war, completely reshaping the 20th century. You've all heard these famous words from FDR. They perfectly capture the absolute shock and fury of a nation. But here's the thing. The story of that infamous day didn't just start when the first bombs fell. The fuse had been burning for a long, long time. So what really happened here? What were the dominoes that had to fall to push Japan and the United States into such a catastrophic fight? Well, that's what we're going to unpack right now. To really get what happened at Pearl Harbor, we have to jump in a time machine and head back to the 1930s. This was a decade full of tension, basically a slow-motion collision between a rapidly expanding Japan and an America focused on its own economy. See, Japan was on the move, big time. First, its army rolled into Manchuria, then it launched a massive invasion of China. This was all part of a huge plan to dominate East Asia. And of course, that was a direct threat to American interests in the Pacific. So the US decided to fight back, but not with bullets, at least not yet. They used economic pressure. And this is where you really see the problem, right? The US just wanted to keep trade routes open and maintain the status quo. Japan, on the other hand, was hell-bent on building an empire to get the resources it needed, and they were willing to take them by force. Those two goals, yeah, they were never going to coexist peacefully. So this economic standoff was simmering away, but then the United States made one specific move that was like throwing gasoline on the fire. It basically pushed the whole situation past the point of no return. The US started turning the screws bit by bit. First, they cut off exports of scrap metal and steel. But the real gut punch, the knockout blow, was the full oil embargo in 1941. You have to understand, Japan got almost all its oil from other countries. Without it, its navy, its air force, its entire war machine would grind to a halt. This wasn't just a sanction, it was a chokehold. If you were a leader in Tokyo, you saw this as an existential threat. The embargo meant the dream of an empire was dying on the vine. Inside the Japanese government, there were these frantic debates. Diplomats were trying to find a peaceful way out, but the military hardliners were convinced America was trying to strangle them. They felt totally and completely backed into a corner. And so their strategy shifted to this: hit first, hit hard. The guy put in charge of planning it, Admiral Isoroku Yamamoto, is a fascinating figure. He'd actually studied at Harvard and knew America's industrial might firsthand. He privately warned his government that he could run wild for maybe 6 months, but after that, he had no expectation of success. But despite his own doubts, he planned a single, devastating strike to take out the one thing that could stop Japan's expansion, the US Pacific Fleet. And all that tension and planning brings us to the day itself. A peaceful, quiet Sunday morning in Hawaii was about to become the backdrop for one of the most shocking surprise attacks in the history of warfare. Just as the sun was coming up, hundreds of Japanese planes roared to life, launching from aircraft carriers hidden in the vast Pacific north of Hawaii. Down at the U.S. Naval Base at Pearl Harbor, they had absolutely no idea what was coming. The attack wasn't just one chaotic blitz. No, it was a carefully coordinated assault that came in two distinct, deadly waves. The sky over the island was just filled with planes, all heading for their targets with ruthless precision. And their main target was unmistakable: the U.S. Pacific Fleet. The thinking was, if they could sink America's battleships, they could buy themselves a crucial window of time, months, maybe even a year, to build up their new empire without anyone being able to stop them. The human cost was just devastating. In less than 2 hours, think about that, in less time than it takes to watch a movie, over 2,400 Americans were killed. The image of the USS Arizona sinking to the bottom of the harbor with over 1,000 of its crews still inside became this tragic symbol of the attack. From Japan's point of view, the attack looked like a stunning, unqualified victory. They'd shattered the heart of American naval power in the Pacific. But, and this is a huge but, there was a critical piece of the puzzle they missed. In what has to be one of the biggest strokes of luck in military history, the most important ships in the modern Navy, the aircraft carriers, weren't even there. They were out on maneuvers. By complete chance, they were saved. And that single fact would come back to haunt Japan. So yes, the attack crippled the fleet, but it also did something Japan never, ever intended.
It awakened what Yamamoto himself famously called a sleeping giant. The age of American isolationism was over. It ended that morning. The very next day, on December 8th, President Roosevelt delivered that iconic Day of Infamy speech. He took all the shock, the grief, and the outrage that Americans were feeling, and he focused it like a laser beam into a single, unified purpose: war. And just like that, a country that had been deeply divided about getting involved in the war was suddenly on the exact same page. Congress declared war on Japan almost unanimously. There was only one single dissenting vote from a lifelong pacifist named Jeannette Rankin.
Then things got even bigger. Japan's allies in Europe, Germany, and Italy honored their pact and declared war on the United States. And all of a sudden, America wasn't just fighting in the Pacific. It was now at the very center of a two-front global war.
The war didn't just change America's role in the world. It completely transformed American society right here at home, leaving a legacy that's both inspiring and, in some ways, deeply troubling. The entire country became an engine of war. You had this incredible public unity, factories started pumping out planes and tanks at a mind-boggling rate, and millions of women, Rosie the Riveter, joined the workforce. It was amazing. But there was a really dark side to all this. Gripped by fear and prejudice, the government rounded up over 120,000 Japanese Americans and forced them into internment camps. It remains one of the most shameful violations of civil liberties in American history.
And that's the complicated legacy Pearl Harbor leaves us with. It brings up this really tough question that we still wrestle with today. The attack united a country for a necessary fight, but it also led to terrible injustices at home. So it makes you ask, when a nation feels threatened, where do you draw the line between keeping people safe and protecting the very freedoms you're supposed to be fighting for?